This is an interview with Bill Finger. What is today? July 1st, 1984. This is Molly. She's 9, and she is 4 years old. And we have just come back from the beach, where all of us spent a week at Bethany. We had a really good time. And this is our chance to get in filled in with what Bill Finger has been doing for the last
37 years.
Besides being a father to his lovely daughter Coco, and a wonderful companion to my sister. What are your latest projects?
Well, my main project is I have a job as an editor of a magazine called North Carolina Insight, and I've been doing it, being the editor for almost 5 years. And it's a quarterly magazine put out by the North Carolina Center for Public Policy Research, which is a nonprofit, private organization that studies state government, mainly policy more than politics. So kind of in-depth studies of everything from how about the state usually, how school finance or the environment or the electoral process, kind of how government works in the state. That's what the purpose of the organization is.
Are you the editor?
The organization has various projects, long-term research projects, and one of about, I'd say maybe a fourth of the program of the center, we call it the Center for short, is a quarterly magazine, and I'm the editor. So I have a boss who's the director of the whole organization, but I'm pretty much my own boss about the magazine.
Why did you go to work with them?
To make a living as a writer.
That's what it was?
Basically. I also, over the years, have worked in and out of kind of state government and politics, using that term very broadly. Things that were affecting kind of the way people live, either government or for a while I worked in labor, related to labor organizing issues, subjects. But there were more jobs and more ways that I could make a living writing and editing, doing something like this and in other areas. But actually I kind of fell into the job. I didn't plan out, look at all the options and figure out here was the thing I wanted to do and really try to get the job editing that magazine. I'd quit a job heading a group called Southerners for Economic Justice. That was working primarily with supporting the J.P. Stevens textile work, primarily trying to get kind of middle class, prominent people, politicians, church leaders, education people to support or just to educate people about what it's about. I decided in college I had been writing off and on, and I got very interested in writing the Southern Exposure magazine when I worked there as an editor. But I never really never went to school trained to be a writer.
You were at Southern Exposure how long?
Well, it was kind of a loose connection. Everybody who was at Southern Exposure would come in and out. I was on the editorial, one of the editors for about 4 or 5 years. I think maybe I'd have to look at my resume. I can't. 73 to 77 maybe. And that's where I started writing articles for publication. Although I had written some even as a child. Georgie and I found some old family photos. I don't know if you've ever seen that with me sitting over a typewriter as a little kid, a 10-year-old kid. So some interest in writing goes way back. And my mother tried to be a writer, so it's an interest.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, but anyway, after that, digression. So I was heading this job, which I didn't like that much. I liked the theory of it and the purpose of it, but day to day, what I was actually doing was not satisfying to me. I didn't like the travel. I didn't like the administrative. Southerners for Economic Justice. I didn't like that kind of responsibility, trying to pull meetings together, and I wanted to write more. So I saw this movie, The Turning Point, with Shirley MacLaine and some other famous actors with Georgia in Washington. And I came out of the movie and decided if I'm ever going to be a writer, I have to try to go ahead and make the plunge. So I quit my job and tried to be a freelance writer for a year and tried to write a book about basketball. So we could move inside.
Okay.
About a year, I tried to be a freelance writer and really didn't know what I was doing at all, like I know now. But I did. I got a grant from the Duke University Oral History Program and taped these oral histories of two basketball teams and tried to write a book about it. Never was able to sell the book. I wrote about 100 pages, manuscript pages, and placed a couple of good magazine articles that gave me enough confidence. But
from that book.
Yeah, well, from that effort, it was never really, the book never happened. So a kind of year's period when Georgia basically supported us with grace ended, and I had to start making money, and didn't really have a direction in my writing, and this job came along. What specific thing that came along is I did get a job from Legal Services in North Carolina to write a long kind of analysis of the state of North Carolina politically. So I wrote this. In the course of writing that and researching it, I came across, I knew about this North Carolina public policy, and I didn't know much about them. I went to them for their publication. And when I went to them, they were in dire financial straits, and they cut their staff way back and didn't have a magazine editor. And so they needed somebody to edit 2 issues of their magazine on a contract basis. So I ended up getting the job and really fell into it and just kind of stuck with it. And had a background in state. I understood state government, that level of government, how it works. I had worked in Massachusetts state government when I was up there, not in the government, but kind of lobbying and monitoring. And then in North Carolina, I worked for a year with assistant to the AFL-CIO president. So I had a sense of anyone, I guess it's hard to know how much it is to me. How much detail is interesting to other people, because my writing career hasn't just unfolded easily. Each time I've really worked on trying to figure out which direction I want to go. So I think about the places I've been, the jobs I've had, what I like. So I got this job editing the magazine, and that gave me some direction for a while. And started. Well, it was a hard job, and I had to learn a lot of new types of writing.
What was the difference?
Well, when I was at Southern Exposure, the writing there was much more advocacy-oriented. You would write, like on J.P. Stevens, for example, it wasn't newspaper-style journalism where you interview one side, you interview the other side, you report. It's not reporting in that sense. At Southern Exposure, it's much more writing from a particular viewpoint. You would gather evidence that was fair, but the point of view would be very explicit. In that case, it's generally in support of the workers' efforts to organize or whatever. My new job at North Carolina Insight had to be much more like newspaper journalism, except it was not in the sense of more fair, of more reporting 2 sides of the story.
What role do you play being the editor? I mean, the board decides what the general theme of the magazine, or how does that work?
The board, in theory, decides the. Well, we have 4 issues a year, and every other issue is a theme issue on a subject. The whole magazine issue is on a single subject. But I was the one that brought that concept to the publication. It was very young. It had only been published for 2 years when I came, and very modest, like 16, 20 pages, almost like a newsletter.
So it's something you've developed.
Oh, yeah. Essentially. But there was a lot of input from the 2 directors I've worked with, too. The first director taught me a lot about writing, but the second director has been much more involved in the content of the publication. What policy issues he thinks are important to explore for whatever reason. As you probably know, at a certain period of time, a state government will decide during this next 2 to 4 years they're going to revamp the system of insurance regulation, the system of school finance, or whatever. So we'll focus on something like that, where it may not really be in the news a lot. Some aspect of it may be, like education's always in the news, because teachers don't get paid enough or whatever. But so we'll try to really look at where gaps in the analytical or quantitative literature are, to So it has a real element of an academic journal. But
so
the
he has
job,
the idea, and you sort of implement how
he has a
it
lot
is.
of the ideas of what the policy issues are, because he's a professional at that. And I don't follow that totally. But I'd rather follow it. My job basically is well, he has. I have some of the big ideas, like we decided to do an issue on the arts. So I have to develop a perspective of what articles might go in there, find the writers, tell them what kind of articles we want, and then edit the articles, get it ready for publication, supervise the production, read the page proofs, and get it published. I used to do all those stages. Then I found this assistant editor who was basically taking the production off. I don't want to do that. Finding photos, all this stuff, writing cut lines for pictures, headlines. It's a small. We only have about 8 permanent staff people, and maybe another 6 insurers or contract people. So it's a small organization, and you have to know a little bit about everything. But basically, my job is to administer the magazine, find the writers, get the articles in, plan ahead of the time so it all happens. You got to keep on top of the timetable. Those writers don't come in, or articles are rough, and then you have to figure out how much to rewrite the account or to give it back to the writer. Anyway, that's what I do. I've been doing that job about half-time to three-quarters time since Coco came.
You worked on your freelance.
Yes. Well, when Coco came, I was working half-time at the center on the magazine, and then about another half-time. I was working full-time before she came, editing a book on tobacco for the same organization. So I finished up that project. That was about a year-long project, editing the book, and it was a big project, a book length effort dealing with 26 different authors and figuring the whole conception out. So that gave me whetted my appetite more for a book length project. I'd also edited a book length project at Southern Exposure, a labor issue of the magazine, a 225-page book, and so I like major projects like that where you can really dip into a subject and stay with it a while and feel like you've contributed to the knowledge on that subject. It's kind of breaking new ground or whatever it is. So I still would like to that's my goal, is to get back to book length projects and figure out the right combination of time and resources and subjects. And time, meaning I'd have to have enough time to do it. I'd have to have enough advance from a publisher and some kind of financial basis. Some topic would have to be, at this point in my life, would have to be interesting enough to enough people to ensure that it makes some money. It couldn't be an academic book, a biography of some obscure figure who might fascinate.
What appeals to you?
Well, I don't know. I'm working on, well, here's the way I've been doing it since about last November. I started trying to build up my freelancing work and schedule more time each week and work more consistently at generally building up some relationships with editors so I can get some magazine articles. And I think that's basically the way people like me who don't have a lot of contacts or time, and not where you can spend a year writing a novel and not have to support a family or something. People can do that and then get their novel published, but I don't have that luxury right now. I mean, I guess I could if it was important enough to me. I think we could contract what we have to live on, but so the way that a lot of people go about it is to try to get some high-profile magazine articles placed, and then use those clips to develop a book proposal on the same subject, or even 2 or 3 magazine articles in the general same area.
So that's sort of your direction.
Yeah. The magazine articles themselves might not turn into a book. I mean, some famous people, they just put their magazine articles together, or even not famous, and that kind of becomes a book. And that's possible. But if you have 2 or 3 clippings in the same subject area with prominent magazines, then it's a lot easier to get book contact. So I'm kind of moving in that direction. I don't have in that general strategy. I don't have a real single subject that I've decided I'm going to pursue till my stamina wears out, like sports or politics or the arts. I'm still a little bit developing a style. My style of writing is both my writing style, the craft, and the subjects that I pick is still probably, sometimes I think it's too eclectic. but still learning. I mean, I hadn't really been at the trade very long, for about, off and on for maybe 10 years. And the last 5 years been full-time, but I spent a lot of time as a parent and as an editor.
Yeah.
I hadn't really been a full-time writer of that, where all I do every day is stand and write.
What, your other major interest is, at this point, is tennis or not? And besides...
You mean as a hobby?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's my main hobby, is tennis.
And do you have any particular goals in that now?
Goals? No.
You did for a while, didn't you?
Well, when I turned 35, I had some goals of trying to get a
You're
ranking.
37 now?
37. This is my third year in the 35 and over division. When I turned 35, I hadn't really played serious tournament tennis since I was a kid. So that was fun. And I played serious tournaments when I was 16, 17, 18. And so I did when I was 35, but I got all these bad draws in tournaments and I had to play 3 people who had played at Wimbledon.
Oh, my heavens.
And that was pretty hard. 3 or 4, maybe. And so then I took it a little bit more of a grain of salt last year. But still, I got ranked, I think 15th in the state, 14th, 15th last year. That's my current ranking on the basis of my tournament last year.
But you have to put a lot of energy into it.
Well, yeah. Playing tournaments takes me away from the family, and even if it's in the Raleigh vicinity, you have to. I might play at 10 and then at 3, so you have to basically stay there all day.
Yeah.
And if you keep winning, of course, that's the goal. You stay there all day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's like going camping by myself or something. So I can't do that too many weekends away.
Back burner.
Yeah, I played some. I played 1 tournament this year though, but I played 6 last year, 1 a month. The way it was then. This year I'll probably end up playing 4. I'm going to play 1 in a couple of weeks, and then I'll play the state in September and another Chapel Hill tournament in October. So it'll be enough to get a state ranking. I'll get some kind of ranking. I don't know what. Maybe not as high sports. But once you get a state ranking, it's a lot easier to keep it than to get it the first time. Because you already got it, and so that's the basis for any ranking. So anyway, that's my kind of main hobby.
Okay. And the other big thing that happened in your life, besides football, is you moved? We
moved to a new house a year ago, which was a big relief getting rid of that old house that we had lived in for 6 years, because we had to constantly work on it and deal with tenants. It was 3 apartments in the house. We did lots of renovations, and I'm not a particularly handy man around the house. I've learned to get by, but it's not
in the trade.
Something that gives me pleasure particularly. Sometimes it's always satisfying to accomplish some project, but in the learning how to do it, each time I do a project, it's a painful learning process. So anyway, a lot of that's behind me because this new house doesn't require the upkeep. It's got a big, huge yard that Georgia really loves and works in. I mostly kind of maintain it, but I like to hang out in it. I like our croquet games in the backyard. So it's a nice, permanent feeling that we're settling into Raleigh. You can hear the creeks in our backyard and the railroad going past, not too far away. Far enough away not to bother you, but near enough away to
hear it.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other major
that's about it.
parts of your life?
No, that's about it.
So it sounds like you're kind of
my marriage.
Things. And
you left out my marriage.
You're married.
George always says I put that last in my list of things. There's work in the house, and taking care of my daughter, and she says don't forget marriage. So the marriage keeps growing and changing. George is, sometimes I think of myself as coming in my career kind of late. I mean, a lot of people, they get out of college, they go to law school, and they're a lawyer or whatever.
Writing takes more.
My career took, some people have been writers since college, and they just, they wrote their first novel at age 25, and that's what they've always been. But it didn't exactly come that way to me, but George's career is even a little different still, because she quit being a lawyer and is now trying to be a quilter, so that takes a lot of support and understanding from her husband. It does. And how much money she wants to make or not make, and how we work that out, and sometimes that's a bone of contention. And it's kind of working out how many hours we're going to work during the week and take care of
So
kids.
flexible that it's hard to, you have to
Both
really
of us,
negotiate it.
both of us are basically freelance people. I mean,
Artist.
well, I don't know about that. She's more of a creative artist in the traditional sense, and I'm real more of a craftsman. And I kind of do the interviews and hammer the words out. Hopefully, some of what I write is creative too. But although I have a job, I basically can do it, and just so long as I get the magazine out and put in 30 hours a week, that's all I have to do.
So that's just something that you all
Sometimes my
negotiate.
30 hours come on the weekends, sometimes at night. I mean, it's even more freer than yours because I don't have clients to get. I have to be in my office at a certain time, and I have to go to some meetings. But little cat fight in the background. So anyway, the marriage takes a lot of work, and now we're thinking about trying to adopt a second child and how that will work out into to the family structure. And
Did you come to any conclusions about that?
no, we haven't yet.
That's
We
what you're working on. None that you want to put on tape anyway, right?
we haven't come to any conclusions. I mean, I think it'll all work out. We work things out more easily than we used to in these kinds of issues about how we're going to take care of the children or something. So we started discussing how much we want to allow in daycare for a second child compared to the first child. And we've been reading about that. And our generation, as you know, is in a way there's just becoming literature, even popular kind of reflections, not to mention scientific literature about the difference in effect on kids who are raised primarily in a daycare center and on parents who both parents work full-time 40-hour weeks and put their kids in all-day daycare, which a lot of our friends do, which we didn't really do with Coco. We always had some babysitting. She got interaction with another adult figure in kids, but we both worked half-time. For a while, it was full-time parent.
Yeah.
With some breaks and babysitters. Anyway, another project in our life, our two families. Except both of our families are both of our families are stay involved with all their children and grandchildren, and like to have family vacations and keep up with the family. And like just this year, I went to Mississippi for a family auction in April, and into my father's retirement in June. So those were two things to fit into the priorities. It's kind of that's one of the reasons I hadn't played tennis. They take a lot of time. The families take a lot of time. I mean, I think it's important to stay in touch with families. Sometimes it even takes more time now when there's such distances involved, because going to see your family, my parents or George's parents or you all, is a little more of an event than it is for some of our friends whose parents live in Raleigh.
Yeah.
And a lot of people live in Raleigh. They have worked it out. A couple of our friends, both parents, live in Raleigh. They grew up in Raleigh, or they grew up around there, and the families have retired there or something. The grandparents are there to babysit or to take the kids or just to
It's a more integral part of your life.
But don't bug them. It's not an oppressive situation. Sometimes I would like that. Whereas sometimes it seems like the only vacations we spend are going either with the strings or the fingers, and we never really have much of a family vacation. Just the three of us, just me and him. So that's
something to think about.
It's a project that is kind of always there. And as our parents grow older, and the responsibility for caring for older people and houses, like the Jim Luska house, what responsibility the children will begin to take to that. We're the closest ones to Jim Luska compared to my sister and brother. Get there much more frequently, so I feel some responsibility for that. Although I don't do much now, my father and mother still basically that's their house. They do all the work.
Well, so it sounds like you have a lot of things going on. And,
Busy life.
What I think we should do is sort of get an update on this in another
Couple
year
of years
or
or
two.
two.
See,
Well, I enjoyed talking
where
to
it
you.
goes. Okay.
Oh, and then stop going to the beach.
Peter, get in there and you can see yourself. Look on the TV now. Face to yourself.
Yeah. Pull it back a little bit farther.
She's definitely
Oh, and look, there's Julia. Oh, look. It's Julia on TV. You know you got on TV? Oh, Peter's shy. Peter is feeling shy, and there he is with his mommy. Oh.
See Julia in the pool? Now she's sitting down. Megan, do your dance. Get the close-up of Peter being real crabby. Let me see you say again.
You won't do it now.
Today is 4th of July, right? Oh, I forgot
So
that
we
the
didn't know
audio
that.
is on too.
Every brilliant word is being recorded.
Yeah. Come on, Arlene, turn around. So we can get the whole thing.
That's the complaint that everybody has about moving pictures is that the people, when moving pictures are taken of them, they sit stock still. As soon as you try to take a still photograph, they want to move around, and jump around, and laugh.
Edward, all of this is going to come on the tape. You understand
Everything
every
you
word you
say.
say.
Really?
That's okay. Ed gave the same speech last year when we were photographing him.
Oh, look at this guy. Oh, look at this girl. Such a cute. Oh.
Megan, who's on TV?
What?
Went to the bathroom.
There's a bee in there.
Yes. Okay, let's go around this side.
Yes, I see.
See a little light come on in a
Okay, I'll
second.
turn it off.
Says VCR or V.
Yeah, it's on, right?
That means it's running.
Don't turn it off.
Eric, look who's on TV.
No, Megan's really got me there.
Yeah.
Why don't we turn it off? I think it's getting a little bit high.
No.
Yeah, right.
Let's turn it off now.
Well, I've always wanted to try my hand at this.
Producer.
Megan.
Can we turn it back on?
You recording sound too?
Why, naturally. Say a few words for posterity. Say a few words for posterity. Who's that talking over there?
We're always very brilliant, except when they turn the machine on. It's only then that we sound as inane and dumb as we are now.
And then you start talking about the machine instead of doing what you're doing.
Right, huh?
So then
Really,
what you get
really.
is not
Everyone
really.
who's watching this in the future, really, we're always
Here, let's get Ann down here to talk about her book.
Liar.
talk about something intelligent. None of the rest of us.
Well, I think these things are interesting for about 5 minutes, and then I
And then what?
think they would.
Yeah.
I think they'll be real interesting to look at actually.
I think we'd all be mortified when you look at it.
Film Peter climbing in through the car window.
Oh, yeah.
Ed keeps trying to catch whoever's talking at the time.
I've always wanted to try my hand at being a director and stuff.
I think you're doing very well.
Nah, I still don't know how the machine works, see? I better let Mr. McKnight at this.
Nobody else knows. Look, you're on TV. Uh-oh, there goes Megan.
But she really does have a mouthful of teeth.
She likes to bite. It's a disaster.
What?
It's freezing
What
to
did you
death.
do?
There you go.
Peter, don't jump on it. Oh, wait,
Look, look,